The Victrix Gambit is one of the controllers featured in my comparison video and included in the group of controllers that were gifted to me by Swift Logic. I've actually wound up using this one as a dedicated controller for my new PC build. You can check that video out with the card above if you'd like. The new PC doesn't have Bluetooth, which is what it is, and I had actually been using the Victrix Gambit on the old Dell before building the new PC. What can I say? I'm a console pleb and I like controllers more than mouse and keyboard for the games that I can get away with it in. I was using the PDP rematch on the PC before the Gambit because of the more consistent latency scores from my testing, and I wanted to love the rematch because of the incredibly low price. But I found that the lower quality buttons didn't suit my personal preferences. So the Victrix Gambit has become my PC main, and could almost replace controllers for me on console if not for the way that my entertainment center is set up. It's not friendly to additional wires. Anyway, on with my actual review of the Gambit. This being some of my first impressions that were made at the time of my testing, with a few additional notes added over the course of time. The Victrix Gambit was incredibly sensitive out of the box. In a way, it reminds me of the PlayStation 4 controller of all things, because on many occasions while placing a PlayStation 4 controller on my desk, the triggers would activate just from setting it down, and the triggers on the Gambit are also incredibly sensitive. I have since used the Victrix Control Hub app, which is available on Xbox and PC, and tuned the triggers to suit me. It all falls into a specific aspect of my personal taste in controllers, in that I believe most of the controllers I tested for the comparison video have a sort of learning curve, especially for people who haven't used controllers with mappable paddles, or case in point with the Gambit, controllers that are just this sensitive. It's not to say you couldn't learn or grow accustomed to them, just that pulling them straight out of the box and jumping into a game without prior experience with this type of controller isn't feasible for all players, and I believe it would be nice if companies would tune these controllers closer to standard Xbox settings so you can pick them up and play with them, then tune the sensitivity to your own liking. In my latency tests using the PC, the Victrix Gambit tied for the lowest response time at 3 milliseconds, which was on the old Dell, and I acknowledge that parts incompatibility may create variances. However, testing again on the new PC showed the same results, so should be pretty consistent. After seeing those original results from the latency test, I was super excited to give the Gambit a try, which is why I find it unfortunate that right from the box it did feel fairly rough in games, because the lightest touch sets off the triggers, and without tweaking any settings I found that in Halo in particular I was regularly firing whatever weapon I was carrying without meaning to fire it, because they really are hair triggers. I felt I did slightly better with it in Modern Warfare 2, which is a game I am more familiar with in general than Halo, spend more time playing Modern Warfare 2. And in this case, while playing Modern Warfare 2, I was constantly aiming higher than I usually would, which isn't the worst thing ever, just comes back to that learning curve. I didn't play super well in either game, which could be partly due to the lack of sleep at the time, partly that I was out of practice, and definitely because the controller just felt strange. Reality is with these style of controllers is that I'm older and I haven't ever bought into them. The closest sort of thing I had growing up was a Mad Catz GameCube controller that had a turbo function that I never used. So basically everything about these lower latency, high octane, remappable controllers breaks my muscle memory and just feels strange. Which is why I keep mentioning that learning curve. And over time, the more and more you play with one of these controllers, you'll build that muscle memory and grow accustomed to whatever you decide to map everything to. Just like I'm growing really fond of the Victrix Gambit for playing games on my PC. The controller has its flaws though. It feels light and cheap, even in comparison to cheaper controllers, which I think is because of the detachable faceplate. It makes the controller feel less sturdy and kind of creaks around in my hands. The buttons and sticks are all quite good though, and the added storage case and accessories really make this controller a pretty good value for the money compared to some of the more expensive ones. So, on to repairability, which is something I've really grown to look for in products that I personally buy. Beyond whatever warranty might come on the Gambit if you have or want to replace parts yourself, well, the The joysticks aren't quite standard Xbox style joysticks. Not the potentiometers on the PCB, those seem to be the same standard Xbox uses. A different branding, but same layout. I've actually bought some that seem identical to the Gambits for my Series X controller. What I mean though, is the actual plastic joysticks, the part you touch to move your character in games or change the camera. The joysticks seat slightly lower than standard Xbox sticks do, and when placing standard sticks on the posts, they ride high and don't allow you to put the faceplate on without creating lots of friction. I mean, if you're the type of gamer who doesn't care to run their joysticks into nubs or worry about any kind of repairability in controllers or tech, then it's probably not a big deal to you. I personally like to change out my joysticks whenever the grip texture starts to wear off. It's not necessary, it's just preference. The issue is that they eventually will wear down to nubs, and I don't know that you can find replacements because they don't list them on their website. You may be able to take some Xbox ones and make modifications to where they would set lower. Possible. Other than that, I don't know any reason almost every part of this controller couldn't last for years because it is wired, and the potentiometers can be replaced as long as you take care of it. Just keep it in its case when not in use. All that said, my honest opinion, if I was going to buy a controller out of the lineup I've tested, buy it for myself, I think the Victrix Gambit would check all the boxes that one of these controllers would check. You've got the mappable buttons, replaceable parts for the most part, and it's not absurdly expensive. I mean, with that said, the price, the latency, and the customization are possibly the best in the bunch, and it does eke itself ahead of the PDP rematch in my mind because the rematch has some serious issues with the buttons. I may still make a video discussing those and reviewing the PDP rematch as a whole, so I won't spoil it all here. Just to say, I think the Victrix is the best of the ones I've tested in the price to performance ratio, with customization equal or better to than the Elite Series 2 controller by Microsoft. Thanks for watching. This has been Valhalla's Demise on TECHNOBABBLE, and I hope to catch you in the next one.